because brand building does take time.
Yeah.
It's a patience game, and you have to be patient.
Yeah.
And I think, there's no quick fix. There's no pumping steroid that you can give. There you can see your online is increasing, your D2C or your marketplace is increasing. It's a business mind and a marketing lens. You just create categories from scratch. What is the right amount of sun protection that Indians require, and build products for Indian skin. Don't build the SPF 50 or whatever. More than that is not meant for Indian skin. So why are we chasing that? I had one diktat my father told me: either you build it or you sell it. You can't shut the business down whatsoever.
Yes.
That's an interesting question.
Welcome to the Indian Silicon Valley podcast. I'm your host Jivraj, and today I have with me a very, very exciting guest. Join me in welcoming Rishabh Mariwala, who's the managing director of Sharrp Ventures, and he's also on the board of Marico and Kaya. Thank you so much, Rishabh, for joining me. Very delighted to be hosting you.
Thanks, Jivraj. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be talking to you as well.
I'm extremely excited because A, we're at the office, we have this environment of where you all work, you've built this, and B, you've seemed like a very, very enthusiastic, exciting person. I've heard such great things about you from some common connects that we have, and you've been very, very kind to make introductions even before we met. So very fortunate to now connect with you. But broadly, I think in terms of trajectory, right, you've taken this family office-like setup and built it institutionally from an investing side. I'd love to understand in the next couple of minutes as we have this conversation as to how you've done that. So maybe if we can start with how Sharrp Ventures came to being in its first avatar, and then we can go on to your journey, what it looks like, and consumer insights.
Sure. No, thanks for that. I think it's been an interesting journey for me and very non-linear in its approach. Maybe if I can start with my own journey, and then
sure,
I think that makes sense, because that's how
from a context standpoint.
I'll talk about Sharrp then. But I came back from the US in 2007, and I worked in our business, which was Kaya, cosmetic dermatology business, Kaya, and I worked there for 3 years. At that time, it was part of Marico. So I was pretty much working for Marico, and even though it was a sort of service-led business, and I did multiple aspects around that for 3 years, in projects, in service quality, in marketing. I worked in online marketing. I created my own website, and we had digital campaigns running then. I realized that, my journey growing up, Jivraj, was I actually came from a family of entrepreneurs. So in my mind, I was always thinking that, listen, I want to know what's happening at what the big picture is in the business.
Yeah.
And when you work I was a junior manager there, and I was fine doing that, and I'm starting up. I can't expect to be some senior position, but over 3 to 4 years I was doing different aspects of it, but I just wasn't getting. I felt a little constricted because I didn't get autonomy. I didn't get independence. I want to do things. Now, it's one thing that the business has scaled. In my mind, I'm just like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to do things my way. I want to learn. And I just wasn't getting that. And I was feeling a little bit claustrophobic being there. So that's when I left. And I had no idea what to do. And that's when, my mother had a hobby of soaps.
You started the soap company.
And so I started this brand called Soap Opera. With my mom. And that's where I learned the 0 to 1 journey of just an entrepreneurship. It was true blue entrepreneurship. There was not a single employee. It was a proprietorship. Yeah. So pretty much I had to establish the proprietorship, and then we started, and I went to an agency, and I got pack design done. I went to do exhibitions. I used to we used to manufacture from the kitchen. We got a license to manufacture. Then I started trying to sell to stores. I used to visit stores myself to sell the product. And it was a great journey because, you don't really know it. If you work in a corporate, then you genuinely don't understand what an entrepreneur goes through. And today, the sort of empathy that I have for entrepreneurs and the respect I have for entrepreneurs only stems from my own experiences, because I just know how tough it's been, because I was in those shoes and I did that for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I did multiple pivots and multiple shifts because, it's soaps. Soaps is not some high margin business, or you can scale to a brand, but to scale to a Dove or a Santu or a Synthol or whatever, it takes decades. It doesn't take years.
Correct.
And that's when I realized, I said, what am I doing? Why am I just restricting myself to that? Because it's only my friends, family, some well-wishers, friends, family and fools that actually buy your products. So I was wondering, why am I not being able to scale? Sure. And then I pivoted to this whole clean beauty concept. This was 2015. Before today, sulfate-free, paraben-free, all these words, they mean something to the consumer. Consumer actually knows.
Correct.
Back then, it didn't. People didn't even know what it meant, right? But I was sort of said that finally launch a brand like that. So I launched a brand called Pure Sense.
Yeah.
And I did that for like 3-4 years. And again, then I was online. I was selling in our stores in Kaya. I was selling in a lot of cosmetic stores across the country. I had distributors in different locations in Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, Goa, Ahmedabad. And so I had some decent scale from when I say decent scale, from the context of soap opera, not from the context of Marico. Right. So the scale was still small, but at least I was sort of off to the races in terms of I was getting growth. I had a good team with me. I had a great product. I was very proud of what I was making. And that's when, while I was doing that, actually my father first had invested, some of the initial investors in Bloom. And, I just really loved the energy of these LP event days, right? And you got to go meet entrepreneurs. You got to understand what is happening. And I didn't understand what venture capital was. I could just spell the name. I couldn't do much other than that. And I got excited. I was like, wow, there's something here. Yeah. So I actually wanted to we have a Marico Innovation Foundation, which basically goes and invests in social businesses and supports them. We support them. So I went there and they were doing something in the sanitation space. I said, wow, I want to invest in sanitation because there's so much waste in the country and so much that we can do. And so he said, there was a colleague of mine in M&A in Marico. He said, why don't you take him and you go and you see what you try to understand. So we went, we understood the entrepreneur. We weren't too impressed with the entrepreneur or the business model, but for the first time we actually did like some broad due diligence. I didn't even know what diligence was, but did diligence, understood. Then, and that guy was very keen that we invest then and there. I said, no, relax, and it was whatever, 50 lakhs, 1 crore, whatever. But we didn't do that. But that opened my eyes to this whole thing, saying, wow, I can do this. And then I told my dad, I was like, listen, can I do a little bit more of this? So he said, and the dividends of Marico were increasing. So he was a true blue entrepreneur. He said, listen, Rishabh, I know Marico is going to give you an IRR of 21%, right? A CAGR of 21%, and that's the IRR that I'm getting. So you better outperform that. Otherwise, why should I put eggs in other baskets, right? Correct. But that's when I told him, let's diversify. Can we try something else outside of this? And he was more than happy. He's like, okay, fine, you've got a point. Let's try this.
Yeah. This is what year?
This is again like 2015, 2016. So the Bloom investment happened in 2009, but then I was in 2009, 2010, and I was learning out there. I was just getting that sense. I just visited this sanitation business I was talking to you about, waste management business, and then we started investing in funds in 2014. Then we had, and then you got a chance to co-invest as well. So the funds would say, hey, listen, you guys want to co-invest, and we'll introduce you to some entrepreneurs. We'll tell you, this is what a term sheet is, this is what a shareholder agreement is. So I didn't know any of that. So, luckily at that same time, this colleague who had come with me to Bangalore, he was stepping out of Marico and was going to do his own angel checks. He said, rather than sitting at Starbucks and writing, 5 lakh angel checks, let me join you, Rishabh, and I'll work as a consultant, but let's do it together. So he was the wiser, older one with more experience, and I was the younger one who was like excited with all what was going on. So I said, that's great. At least I have someone there who knows this kind of stuff, and someone who I trust and who trusts me. So we started that journey together, and we started investing in funds. We started co-investing. Then I think our big break came in 2015-16 when Mrs. Falguni Nair came to us and said, came in a sari, and she said she's pitching cosmetics for the millennials. And at first I thought, that's crazy, how does a ex-banker come and sort of get into something like this? Yeah. But then I understood her story, I understood her background, what she was doing, and I was just confronted to myself. I said, my gosh, this is perfect. Amazon is not really doing much. Myntra was nowhere at that time in beauty person care. I said, this is bang on. This is the way to go. And I saw a team was very competent. I said, we have to do this. And that sort of got us sort of thinking in terms of our own direct investments and early days, where we put small checks. And then, we did 3 rounds of those investments, and every time the money kept doubling and tripling, right? In terms of quantums that we were putting into Nykaa, and we were just like sold on that. And I said, we have to bet the house on her, I wish we had bet more, but again, it was a great journey because one, we were investing in funds. So we did stuff in tech, we did stuff we didn't understand, we did stuff in consumer. And I think over a period of time, right, between 15 and 20, I think I realized 2 things. I realized, one, I like investing more than I like operating.
Okay.
And 2 is that I understand consumer more than I understand other businesses. So I get consumer. I don't understand deep tech. I don't understand clinical trials. I don't understand fintech. So even though we were allowed to sort of try out different things, we sort of zoned in on consumer as a thought in 2020. Which we realized at that time. I mean, in 90 we realized, okay, fine, what are we good at and what have we actually done decently well in? It's consumer.
Yeah.
So let's focus on that. Let's not do other stuff that we don't get. So I think that was, so that was one part. And the other part was this whole thing of saying that, okay, fine, if I enjoy investing more than operating, then what am I doing running my business? So that's when, at that time Marico was looking at D2C, and sort of I approached Saugata, who was the CEO, and they were keen to buy it, so they bought it at a very cheap price. But still, I was fine because I had one dictate. My father told me, either you build it or you sell it. You can't shut the business down whatsoever. So I said I have to sell it. So you're going to sell it, and then full time in 2020, I sort of got fully involved into just investing, and it became my full-time thing. At that time, I was dedicating 20-30% of my time, but the operation business, of course, is more time-consuming. It takes up, however small scale it is, it takes up a lot more time. That's the reality of any business that anyone's running, and I can't afford to just let that not give it time. Sure. So I mean, that's the start of the journey of Sharrp, and then over a period of from 2020 till now, we've really, I think, we've realized during the game that we have to have a deeper thought process in terms of our strategy and in terms of how we're thinking about it. So we're sort of focused on consumers one piece. I think that's very clear, and then within that, I think it can't be a one-horse show, so it can't just be me, and the buck can't just stop at me. And I'm clear that today, if you say family office, the assumption or the perception actually is that this is like in free time you have some free cash.
It's a traditional setup.
You're just doing it you're doing it for fun. You're doing it because it's cool. You're doing it because of cocktail conversations. I mean, there's this whole association with that. So I wanted to sort of demystify that and sort of break that myth and say that no, the same way in which a Marico has been institutionalized by my father, as this is something that I want to do out here, and I wanted to be professionally run. I don't want it to be run like a mom and pop shop, or even if it's got scale, I don't want to be a one-man show. I want it to be run like an institution, sure. run with teams, run with deep diligence, with thought leadership, with depth, and truly bring a professional touch to it, rather than it being just driven on the whims and fancies of the family or the founder. And that's the thought process. That
the investing piece is also very interesting, because a lot of family offices are now popping up now that there is more liquidity in the market. But a lot of people want to aspire to become to the point that you're institutionalizing the family office, which is a very amazing feat. I think this will be very helpful to a bunch of people. I want to double click on a couple of things, right? You initially started to invest in funds. I'd love to know, now that you're a fund manager yourself, and when you were investing in funds and you continue doing so, what do you look at when you invest in a fund manager? What are the traits that really, define a fund manager? Because you were, one of the first investors in Fireside as well, which has been an incredible consumer-focused fund. What do you take from that?
I mean, a whole bunch of things, right? I mean, it's over. We've done 15 funds till now.
Sure.
But I think, the sincerity of the founding team. So, I think we are one of the few sort of investors where, and it didn't happen by design, it happened by default, where most of our investments were first-time fund managers. So what we've actually realized is that the hunger is just there in first-time fund managers. So of course the diligence has to be done on them in terms of thought process, in terms of their depth, in terms of what they believe in and how they're scaling, and what is their vision for the fund. And every fund manager has a different vision and a different perspective other than the themes that they have. But I would think it's about truly being. I mean, one is how much they support their entrepreneurs.
Sure.
Right. I think that's critical. Two is, I think, even we actually like lower AUM funds. We don't like funds with high AUMs. Yeah. I think the entire motivation for the fund managers to be very clear. If you're going on raising multiple funds very quickly, it actually is not exciting, because then, yes, you have to do it because it's an AUM game, but I think it's wrong when, if you're an early stage fund and you have too large of a corpus, I think it's distracting. Sure. Because you have to stay nimble and on ground and stay active with your investments, and when you have too large of a team, it can actually distract you, or too many investments, it can distract you.
Correct.
So how do you stay true to your vision and mission and truly help the entrepreneur and truly support through the journey? So without being an AUM machine, because once you're an AUM machine and you just build, your AUM as an assets under management, you keep building that up, then you get distracted because, you're just going out raising, and you're building your team and you're building your portfolio, and then you don't know where to look because there's the complexity. It is complex. It is a heavy lifting game. There's no doubt about that. The kind of support that I think founders, fair enough, expect, and that one should give also is there in terms of time, energy, effort, right? It's not just the capital, but it's time, energy, effort that you give. What are the blood, sweat, tears that you're doing for the founder, right? Founders doing blood, sweat, tears, but what are we doing from our end? How are we supporting them? How are we engaging with them? What doors are we opening? What networks are we opening? How are we helping them on strategy? All that really means something. So I think I would like to see the sincerity of the fund and the ethos by which the fund is started, and the thought process in terms of what they want to do, and is their philosophy right? Is their philosophy, are you aligned with their philosophy of their thesis? I think how true are they to their thesis and in terms of playing out along with this AUM piece that I'm talking about, and along with the focus. Yeah. So just a bunch of things. I think, and maybe past experience of course helps in terms of whether they're operators or not. If they're true blue just investors without being operators, I think that's another challenge. I think they should have got their hands dirty, they should have rolled their sleeves up, they should have been in the trenches. All that makes a difference, right? Because they've been there, done that. Their empathy towards their entrepreneurs is critical. I think you have to appreciate the highs and lows of entrepreneurship. It's a lonely game. Yeah. How are they there for the entrepreneurs in good times and bad? I think that's critical.
No, absolutely. I love that. I think that goes to show how you're building your fund as well, knowing the other side and evaluating so many fund managers yourself, but very, very insightful, because we don't often hear the side of an LP when investing in funds. And I think this way it just becomes very insightful. On the counter question, which is to say that, you spoke to some of these amazing entrepreneurs, the founder of Nykaa, the Mamaearth story has been very, very spread in the news these days. But Bira, Samir of HealthCart, all of these incredible people. Do you have any commonalities across these outlier founders? You observed your dad up close as well. What would you like to share on that front?
Yeah, I think they're very just the grit. There's IQ, EQ, and GQ. So IQ, is intellectual quotient, EQ is emotional quotient, GQ is the grit quotient. So I think the one commonality I've seen is the level of grit that they have in terms of just persevering through is just very high. They don't take no for an answer. I think they're very frugal also. Yeah. Frugality also means a lot, especially in the consumer business. When you're flush with funds, it's easy to burn capital. But how frugal are you? And how frugal is the founder with that? And how do they really build I think inspirational leadership where when they're building a team around them, how can they inspire top quality talent to join them? And that's what I've seen across a lot of these folks you've spoken about, right? Their ability to spot talent, hire and retain talent is just very high. Yeah, you can call it charisma, you can call it whatever you want to call it, but I think the ability to manage day-to-day chaos and day-to-day sort of stress, pressure, and everything, right? When you're growing at breakneck speed. So how do you deal with that in a way which is where you're not volatile, where you're able to manage yourself and others and be on top of the game, and inside out and outside in both. I think inside out, where you are seeing your own quarter performance, your monthly performance, your team performance, your own performance, and then outside and also what's happening externally, right? There's so many moving parts in the ecosystem. How do you manage that? How do you manage those relationships? How do you manage a whole lot of other things, right? So a lot of these entrepreneurs have been through so many ups and downs, right? So they've, they would have weathered, either they will weather the storm, or they've already weathered those storms in their own journeys. And I think that ability to persevere through has just been, just phenomenal.
Got it. No, those are all phenomenal pointers. Why don't we double click on the specific thing that was, Mamaearth investment. Yeah. Talk to us about how that happened.
Yeah, so that was super exciting, and I think we've just been lucky to engage with Varun and Ghazal, and I think we are deeply engaged with Fireside, and entire portfolio. I think a few of the 4 portfolios that come to our office to engage with us and meet my father and meet some of the Marico teams, saying that, listen, let's engage with them and how can we help them. And we connected with Varun earlier as well through another investor, and so there's multiple connects that we had with Varun, and I think through that, I think we just he probably saw in us the Marico and just getting support just from our ecosystem. And initially, of course, he came to my father for advice, and later on also my he's spoken at Hunasa as well, in smaller forums, but it's pretty much that those initial engagements that happened, and then at that time, thanks to that, we got a chance to invest when Fireside was doing their other round, and then I was on the board for some time, and it's true credit to the founders to actually build this, and we've seen them. I've seen them initially at those board meetings when we were on the board, I was running my own skincare business at that time. I should go to Varun for advice as well, and just phenomenal in terms of what their digital quotient is. Just it's top quartile. There's no question about it. The ability to create brands. Digital quotient, I think that one could say earlier as well, frankly, right? Today you can say, after the listing, you can say, they've created Aqualogica and Dermaco and Dr. Shades and whatever else. But I would say that, their whole content, their whole thought leadership on all these influencers. At that time also we could see that, right? I think fine, that those were some of the things that we can say that, okay, fine, they were doing it. We could just spot it as investors. I think that's all we can say. But it's kudos to them, frankly, right? Nothing to do with us. It's kudos to them for building up the way they did.
Sure.
But their digital quotient and then their ability to create brands, I think that's the other two phenomenal things that they've done, right?
Sure.
But great. Super story for the ecosystem, and
such a
sort of being I think thought leaders and I think first movers, right, in this whole D2C going IPO. It's a story that is a trailblazer for many other brands to come. This is the poster child for that, right?
100%. Yeah, this is going to lead to a lot of other generational companies, because people will look at them and be like, we can also if they can. And I think that's super powerful for the ecosystem. But lovely to know how it shaped up. I think everybody from the outside in wonders how these things happen. And if it's obvious at the time of investment, but you can only know so much, and you let the odds play, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't know. And genuinely, if you ask me, did I think that these outcomes are going to be so phenomenal? I'd be fooling myself if I did, right? As venture capitalists today, I would say that these are home runs, right? From that perspective, that I would love to think that there are going to be multiple home runs like this. But one doesn't know. And I would like to think that's going to happen, but it's wishful thinking still.
Yeah, got it. No, I think that's super true and very candid of you to mention. Just very quickly double clicking on the Marico group in and of itself, your learnings from your dad as well. I think that'll be very helpful to understand how as a second generation entrepreneur you have a certain sense of responsibility and learnings that you take forward with you, and then you carry it ahead. So what has that been like? What is the influence of all of this?
No, I think it's a lot. I think his humility, so his ability to sort of, I think he's very down to earth, and he's of course he's a great entrepreneur, and I hope I have 1/10 of that entrepreneurship that he's got in him. I have in me, but he's a true blue entrepreneur, and he's got a pulse of products, thought process, trends. It's all sort of, and he's still there. He's still sort of, he's the chairman. He's not the CEO, but it's still very much inherent in him till date, and the kind of suggestions that he gives, and a lot of the stuff that in hindsight he was ahead of its time in a lot of ways. And be it in terms of failed experiments also, sometimes it's just ahead of the game, and India just wasn't ready for some of the launches that we had done earlier, and today they're successful. But back then when we did it, the market wasn't ready for it, and that's when you can see those nuances that other people can't see, because you can see those trends that you're spotting ahead, and sometimes it's just not the right time, right? And sometimes some entrepreneurs, if they're at it for some point in time, they're keeping at it, and I think that's the story of Marico also, right? Every time hair oil would probably be written off by analysts saying that, listen, how much potential of hair oil is there in the country, but the reality is that the quantum we're the largest sort of hair oil brand in the country today, and the potential is even more in terms of what's possible with coconut oil and with hair oil, right? So I think it's massive what can be achieved, and I think he's done this through. I mean, people management has been great with him. I think he knows how to work well with people, and he respects his teams. He respects the organization. For him, it's been organization first. So what's good for the organization is what's good for the business, not what's good for the family, not what's good for an individual or for him or for something. So he always puts that first. I think for me as a learning, I think it's the sort of stewardship. So that comes in, and it's more in terms of, okay, is the culture intact? How are we moving as a culture or not? Is do people enjoy working here? Do people want to work here? What is the level of sort of boundarylessness? What's the level of ownership that people have, right? How's that sort of shaping up, right? Those things actually make a difference, and how do you sort of, as a board, how do you influence management, or how do you sort of play a role in terms of those journeys, but without being operationally involved? I think that's the role. So one has to have a good pulse of the business, of course, but it's also learning best practices externally, like what I learned today in my business out here in venture capital, what you and I do. It's very different from a large organization. Sure. And large organization has quarter-on-quarter pressure. They have EBITDA pressure. They have guidance that they give to analysts. Sure. Our portfolio that doesn't. Right. But because in my portfolio we have agility. We have move fast. We have insurgent challenger brands that are there. So what's about their playbooks that a large company like Marico can learn, right? I think it's things like that are able to from where I sit, can get a perspective both, I think, from the small brands and the agility with which they are moving, and maybe to share with Marico, and vice versa, right? What Marico does in sustainability, because it's phenomenal, and very few people know about that. And how do you use that for some of your portfolio companies, because that's become a big part of the agenda as well today, right? Sure. Where these UN sort of sustainable development goals, UN GDP goals, SGD goals that are there, right? That are then placed these 16 goals about water conservation and materiality and emissions, and multiple others that are there. So how do you influence your portfolio to do more for good and to have a purpose behind the brands? I think that's also something that we want to truly work on, and that one can play a role, be it in Marico or be it in the Sharrp portfolio on such topics.
Sure. No, that's phenomenal. I think I'm hearing a lot of these nuances, high judgment, and really learning influenceability, and these are all very, very helpful skills. Rishabh, as we move forward, I think we've covered, the story of what you've learned from the investments and these investing in funds. Can we also talk about, what the consumer trends and when investing in consumer are, perhaps, because that's the vantage point which is very helpful. And even before we get there, I'd love to understand from you if you can just describe one of your favorite consumer experiences, right? Like maybe your favorite brand and how you've enjoyed it and how much of that plays a role in your sort of evaluation of consumer brands. So maybe that first, and then we'll go deeper.
So my favorite brand and my the kind of brand experience, the customer experience I've had with that.
Yes.
That's an interesting question. So I mean, they're multiple, right? Sure. They're multiple. But I would think that one of our recent investments, right? It's probably not. I don't think it's announced yet, but it's a shoe brand.
Okay.
And I realized, I'm a strong believer in sustainability, and I don't wear leather. I'm quite a, I think, conscious consumers, how I'd like to call myself.
Sure.
I realized that I was, the price point was really good of these shoes, right? They were like 2,000 to 3,000 rupees. It met my perspective in terms of the non-leather. And you probably know which brand I'm talking about, but I won't share the name. I realized that, in being a conscious consumer, I have the same pair of shoes I've been wearing, but I've not. I just consume that one shoe, or I might have two of those just in case I'm whatever, for travel or whatever. I need one more, but in this case, I was buying like 4 or 5. So why am I doing this? It's not like my nature to do this. Okay. But it's something that's driving me towards this brand. Why am I continuously consuming this brand? And it's just completely outside of my nature to do this. And I just realized that I just kept buying the same thing again and again. And then I went and checked with other people, and like, I've also been doing the same. We got like 5 or 6 pairs of this. And the brand pull and the brand memorability was so high in this, and the brand stickiness was so strong that it just kept driving me to purchase. And then I said, fine, what's the fuss all about, and why am I doing this? And earlier they had wool shoes, and I said, listen, if you're wool, then the wool is not sustainable to me, so I don't want to invest in this. Okay. Then they said, no, our wool has changed, and we've got the right sort of sustainable guidelines for this, and this is where it's sourcing from, and now it's only less than 5 or 10% of it. And I said, wow, this is perfect. And with that in mind, we sort of invested, right? And of course, the other things as well, but sometimes it's truly the brand experience that made a difference. And for that same reason, that's the reason why there's certain coffee brands I've not invested in, because I just felt that even though I'm not the TG, I just feel the coffee sometimes. I love my coffee, and I'm not if I don't find, even if I'm not the target audience for that, if it's cheap coffee, I just find that the experience is not good. It just doesn't cut it. It just doesn't cut for me, and I can't get myself to do it. I can't get myself to even think of investing, because I just find that it doesn't deliver on certain aspects of that consumer delight, consumer love, or the consumer experience. I think today itself we launched, it's come in the press today, this brand called Nat Habit, which is these sort of fresh beauty personal care products. And just love the ethos behind it. The ethos is just so real, and it's just all fresh. The shelf life might not be 1 year. It might be lower shelf life products, but the ability to create supply chain and the ability to create just fresh natural products, which truly have a unique proposition, is mind-blowing to me, because nobody's been able to do that, what they've been able to do, and I think that's so unique, and of course I consume that, and it just adds to it, because of the reason why the reason you'll consume it is because it's low shelf life. That's the reason to believe, right? Yeah. Because it's low shelf life. Yes, your sales, as an investor, you'll think, oh, but it's not going to scale because you need long shelf life. Yeah. But it's the complete it's counterintuitive, right? It's completely counterintuitive. Or even caffeine, right? Yeah. It's just coffee is limiting, because how many people are going to consume coffee products? But the reality is these guys have caffeine scaled, and they scaled to a significant value. Now they've launched green tea, they've launched another brand with recent one called Hyphen, and they've been able to do that because they just focus on one ingredient with coffee, and everything from their packaging. I mean, they had shampoo in a coffee mug, and that coffee mug was designed with coffee pellets and coffee produce, and it's just so, everything is so coffee about it, and their thought leadership on coffee is so high. It's sort of phenomenal. It's just so phenomenal.
Oh, awesome. No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and very glad to hear the different interesting consumer journeys that you've been a part of. But to get into, what really makes a brand successful, especially in today's environment, everybody is saying that, I've used this sentence a bunch on the pod when I'm hosting founders, that CACs are high, getting time share from a consumer is very difficult, scaling a brand is very difficult because starting is very easy these days. So all of this jargon is out there. What do you believe in general about how to really build consumer brands, and what do you think you have learned from observing and building that these are ingredients that go into really building a long-term consumer brand?
Yeah, I think our time horizons, Jivraj, are 8 to 10 years, right? So unlike other VC funds, we're okay holding out and waiting, right? So I mean, that's our moat, that's our uniqueness, because I don't return money to other investors, right. So I can have the luxury of taking the long game. And genuinely, I think that augurs well for brands, because brand building does take time. Yeah. It's a patience game, and you have to be patient. Yeah. And I think there's no quick fix. There's no pumping steroid that you can give. There you can see, your online is increasing, your D2C or your marketplace is increasing. Yes, you might get some blip, but is it sustainable or not? Your CM1, CM2s have to be in place. You have to build gradually, and you can't. I mean, there's no point in taking quick fixes or shortcuts when it comes to just increasing your top line, right?
Sure.
It's going to come and bite you back.
Yeah.
So how do you do that in a very sustainable manner without the burn? And sometimes it's sort of, there are different types of founders. Some founders learn their lessons the hard way. Some founders think that, listen, we know upfront that this is what we don't want to do, so we're intentionally going to make sure that we can make money, but we know the levers of how to make money, and in a flip of button we can be we can turn them on and be EBITDA profitable. But we're choosing to grow, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. And those are the founders that we want to back and work with, because yes, of course we want growth. Of course we want growth. So we're not asking for break even on first year, second year, third year. Yeah. But is there what's the path to that, and what is the burn that's happening today for that? If it's only burn to earn, then it's a problem, because then it becomes a drug and it becomes like a addiction, right? That they need the fix of top line, and that can only happen through infusing money in performance marketing, which then doesn't augur well for the brand in the long term. Right. So I do think that you have to have brand memorability. I think brand memorability is critical through the right storytelling, and investing in brand building is critical also. So yes, of course, performance marketing is there, but what percentage of your marketing budget goes into brand building? I think that's critical in an innovative format through the right value proposition. What is your value prop?
Yeah.
And what is the uniqueness, right? What are you signing up for when you sign up for the brand and when you invest in the brand? I think that uniqueness is be clear to the investor and to the founder as well on day one. Why are you different, and why are you standing out from the pack? I think that's critical. And being true to that, it's very tempting to say, okay, can we do something else? Can we try a different category? Can we do something different? But I think that the depth of, sometimes, certain categories that they are less penetrated. So how do you actually increase penetration in certain subcategories, or how can you create categories, right? I mean, you've spoken to some trailblazers who've created categories just because of unique propositions where even if it's premium, even the product is premium, right?
They've been able to break through.
They will break through. So masstige is, you'll get multiple brands there, but premium, prestige, right? Yeah, those target, the target market might be small initially, but then are they creating markets? Are they creating brands and creating markets? I think how do you be a market creator? I think, and that can come from a certain level of innovation, right? Which is like India forward, right? So you can take the same proposition that's there in the West to a food, to a nutrition product, to a beauty personal care product, but given an Indian twist, and then to the nuances of the Indian consumer. I think create categories that didn't exist otherwise, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of the right marketeers and the right entrepreneurs when they have that beautiful mix of, I think, just a business mind and a marketing lens which helps create categories from scratch. I think that's where the magic is, right? That's where the magic happens.
Absolutely. No, I love that. I think those cover a lot of interesting pointers, and I can see the fundamentals of building a large business when you say it, right? Frugality, profitability, and it can't be just road to burning, because you've seen that, you've lived that, and now it extends to your investing philosophy as well, which is lovely. I'd love to understand from a more consumer lens, right? Have you observed any pressing sort of needs from a consumer lens as to when they are going after buying new age products or the traditional products? What do they want, and how can founders then work backwards at, can I build for this consumer set?
Yeah, so from a consumer need and you're saying that figuring out what the consumer wants.
Yeah, what does the Indian consumer want? What are your insights from that perspective?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot that's happening, right? I mean, if you take beauty, personal care, this whole lipstick index that exists, right? Mm-hmm. Where disposable income is there, all of a sudden in tier 2, tier 3, and the first thing that they'll go with their disposable income is go and buy beauty, personal care, right? Yeah. And then going and buying beauty, personal care, and then saying that, okay, fine, availability just is not existent, right? In tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities, right?
Yeah.
And towns. And then how do you market to that consumer, or what do you do? Is it a multi-level marketing model? Is it going to the block districts and
distribution
and saying going to wholesale, going to these micro entrepreneurs and having them sell, for example, beauty, personal care, right? There's so much that you can uncover from this, that you just take a brand from the West, for example, give it an Indian twist. Indians don't require SPF 50, for example, which is for sunscreen, right? What is the right amount of sun protection that Indians require, and build products for Indian skin. Don't build the SPF 50 or whatever. More than that is not meant for Indian skin. So why are we chasing that, right? So how do we chase something that's meant for Indian palate, right? You can have a breakfast. Indians don't have cold breakfast with milk, right? They want hot, So how do you bring masala to something, to an Indian or to a Western dish and Indianize it, right? I mean, there's so many nuances and subtleties to this that you're seeing, that even, I mean, it could be channel either through a geo, because of geo and the proliferation of geo that's come into the smaller cities and towns that otherwise wasn't there, and all of a sudden that market is seen on soaps or on soap operas or on prime time, and all of a sudden this whole new universe exists of other products that are meant for tier 2, tier 3, but are not meant for urban cities, right? Hard water, soft water, I mean, such nuances that exist, right?
Correct.
Based on your water content, what you're putting in your hair, how do you build the right products for hard water, right? Where your hair gets coarse or you're losing hair. There's so many subtleties to even problems like that, which other countries don't face, or that is so so focused on India, pollution. How do you work on pollution in today's urban environment and create products for that with air filters, which otherwise for today's homes at an affordable price, or low cost fans that we know of, right? Which otherwise didn't exist anywhere in the world, and through a different motor, you got a low cost fan coming up. It's unreal in terms of the plethora of opportunities that exist in this country.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. That's very, very varied. But the crux, in my opinion, what I heard back was just focus on the Indian consumer need and figure it out by being on ground. And that really counts. This is very, very interesting. And the last, maybe going a bit more deep into how to build brands, a lot of people are now focusing on, distribution offline. Yeah. That's become the buzzword, right? Because people are saying that maybe the digital economy is a bit capped. So you really have to, if you want to build a generational sort of company, you have to really go offline. And then there are these QSR models which are coming up as well. A lot of offline first models coming up again, right? So it almost feels like we're back in the day. What do you think about the offline channel of distribution? How much of that will play a role in brand building? And also the QSR model, do you think there's scope in that as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, 100% in terms of offline. I think brands can get to, a 100 crore business online on a 100 crore ARR. And then at some point, I think, if you want scale in the country, then you have to look at offline. There's no question of it. I think that is the holy grail. You can have online first digitally native brands that get created online. Yeah. But then how do you move to the masses, and how do you move to offline? Offline can happen through multiple forms, right? It could happen in the consumer business itself. It can happen through modern trade. It can happen through general trade. It can happen through wholesale. The multiple formats it can happen through, but I think beyond a certain scale, it has to happen.
Sure.
Right? It can happen through different channels also. There are multiple channels that exist in the country. So, but for scale, doesn't need to happen? The answer is, there is a sounding yes. There's no question of that. They have to be understand the game. I think that the challenge is that, you have to, as an entrepreneur, you have to focus on one initially, because that's where you'll get the head. That's where you'll get the whole flywheel going. Exactly. Yeah. And so you'll be super competent in one channel, but how do you quickly morph into another channel altogether, which will again truly help you in terms of the next phase of growth.
Sure. Well, that's super crucial. I think reinforcing the belief that, offline is the way, just about when, it's not if, and you have to decide how as an entrepreneur you go about it. To bring this to a close, Rishabh, if you had to summarize, let's imagine I'm somebody who wants to start a brand today, and I'm young, I'm right out of college. What would you tell me on day zero of starting a brand? If you could just very quickly summarize your operator learnings, your learnings from investing in consumer brands.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really interesting question. And I think it's, one is don't think so much. Put it down on pen and paper, write it down. What is the problem statement you're trying to solve? How are you doing that? What's out there? What are you trying to? How are you meeting the needs of consumer? And what you're trying to do? How is it different? How is it different from what's otherwise out there in the market?
Sure.
And what do you bring to the table, right? What are you bringing to the table, and how are you creating a minimum viable proposition? I think start with an MVP to begin with. I think, rather than burning too much money or thinking of other things, I think, just being close to the customer, listening to them, and then getting your, I won't say unit economics, but having a broad thought process in terms of a quick and dirty way, in terms of figuring out, a model that exists, right? It's like a lemonade stand model, saying that if you're trying to sell lemonade, how would you make money? And it's simple math. It's not hard. And I think through that itself, identifying the pain point and the proposition and the uniqueness around it, I think, and starting small, I think that will just help just give a base effect in terms of just saying that, okay, from here I can build from here. And of course it has to be frugal. It can't be bells and whistles, and just be I think it's just, stick to core, stick to basics and fundamentals in terms of just something very simple to begin with. And in that 1 minute, I mean, even if you're not pitching to an investor, but if you're able to explain that 1 minute elevator pitch that has to happen, that has to be very clear in your mind. So keep chiseling at that and just focus on that, and then go from there.
Got it. Lovely. I love that. I think just simplifying and not overcomplicating and getting started in a frugal manner is what I'll take back from that. Now, as we go on to conclusory aspects, these are a series of questions that I ask most people. This is more curated personally to you as opposed to the investing or the operator hat. But the first question that I usually ask is that if I had to ask a group of your friends to describe Rishabh, what would they say?
Well, I think my friends would say I'm probably patient.
Okay.
I think I'm a soft. I'm not aggressive personality. I think easy to talk to, and I think quite. I won't say relaxed, but easy to talk to and easy to get along with. And I would say I'm a bit shy. I think that's pretty much
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, that's interesting. And to flip it, if I had to ask you for one superpower, the thing that you are really, really, really good at, and you internally believe that this is your superpower.
Empathy. I think I can empathize with entrepreneurs. I can empathize with my team. I can empathize with just others, and I think that's a trait that I would hope to have with me in my entire life.
Awesome. That's very, very good one. The next one is a bit tricky, and I've seen a couple of pauses usually when I ask this, but one thing that you fear.
Fear. Yeah, I think, for me, it's, it takes, reputation can get built also, can get built very fast, but it can be lost in a second. Mm-hmm. I think, keeping your reputation and having the right governance, being the right sort of following, doing everything ethically, doing everything right, not letting success get to you, not being grounded, down to earth, being simple. I think that's critical for me. And that's fearful as well, because you don't want to lose that aspect.
Sure. And that's super sound of you to mention. And in fact, sets me up for my next question. Well, as I was researching, a lot of people, and Aniket in particular, told me that you're very humble, right? And this is something that I've heard. What do you think? Humility is something that's not very easy to keep intact, especially for, considering your background and that you've seen success. Talk to us a bit more about that. How do you stay grounded?
I think I just look at my father, and someone told me this, right? Every single human being, when they get up in the morning, they put one leg into one trouser, the other leg in the other trouser. No one's that different, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's the same. So
that's true.
Everyone's got their own struggles and their own journeys in life, and I think we're just. It's good to be just be grateful. I think being grateful is critical, and I have enough people. I have my wife to keep me grounded. I have other people to keep me grounded. So I'm happy. Yeah.
Awesome. That's lovely. On the lighter side, if there was an alternative world without the world of startups, what would you be doing instead?
For sure, I think I'd be an entrepreneur. There's no question of that. Again, I've said this to you earlier. I think the entrepreneurship is hard, and I only respect entrepreneurs because I've been one myself, and I know how hard it's been.
Yeah.
But truly, I think that would be the only thing that I'd really do is work on, either be a social entrepreneur. I think that where there's a deeper cause and a purpose to what you're doing, because there has to be meaning to what you do.
Sure.
I think I would be a social entrepreneur.
Got it. Wow, that's a fascinating answer. To bring this to a close, and this has been super fascinating, Rishabh, thank you so much. But I think this is usually a stereotypical question that I ask, but if you could go back to the day that you were perhaps, starting Kaya or starting your first soap opera brand, right? What would you tell yourself knowing all that you know today?
Wow. Yeah, I think just, don't sweat the small stuff. Just do what's aligned to you. Like do what you believe in. Sometimes I was sort of hesitant to ask people to go when I should have asked them to go much earlier. I was, hesitant to speak what I felt was the truth, or to make my mistakes. I could have made more mistakes. At the same time, I don't have any regrets. Like, it's okay to take a little bit of risk. I think I could have taken more risk as well upfront earlier, and I was very frugal and like bootstrapped in my thinking. I could have done more sort of, little bigger thinking in terms of my part. I think don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes will happen, and of course I've made mistakes. I could have made more mistakes. Yeah. I think mistakes is the only stepping stone to learning, and multiple mistakes only will make you grow, right? So just be unabashed in your thinking.
Sure. Lovely. I think these are all very interesting points to end on. Thank you so much, Rishabh, for your time. It's been such a pleasure to host you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Jivraj. Appreciate it.
Thanks you so much.
Thank you.